I want to do two things tonight. One is I want us to dispense with our overview of the reading, maybe catch up some Sunday. But I wanted to finish up the part that I wanted to do tonight with the Maccabees, and then have Richard to help us with Rome as a republic and as the empire and how it comes in. Richard has made some special studies of Roman military history, and I thought it would be wise to have him to help us out along those lines. But I want to go back real briefly and look at just a few things. We're looking at this time period. Persia ruled the world at the close of the Old Testament, but while they were in control, they wanted to go all the way to where? Persia did. All the way from where to where? Yes, exactly. All the way to Europe, over to Macedonia, the Greek states. And we ended up Sunday with these ideas that at the time Alexander died, his kingdom was divided between his generals. And primarily, there are more than three, but primarily in our study of the scripture, Ptolemy received the part of Egypt and part with that included Palestine. Seleucus Nicator, well, this would happen, wouldn't it? Received Thrace, Asia Minor, Syria, Babylon, Media, all the way this way. And then Antiochus, the small part of Greece in there. So we're coming down. All this was prophesied in the vision of Daniel in Daniel the 8th chapter. Seleucus Nicator, just think Seleucus, Syria, northeast, included this area. This began the new Syrian Empire, which was to remain until 64 BC, about the time that the Romans took over. Ptolemy was beginning a kingdom in Egypt. His dynasty would last approximately 3 centuries with the capital in Alexandria. The empire controlled Jerusalem and the area for about 100 years. And during that time, there was a period of peace. I've constructed some things. We've got the death of Alexander around 323. And under the Ptolemies, from about 321 to 198, prosperous in the area of Judea or Palestine. And we want to remember that the Septuagint was translated in what city in Africa? I mean Egypt. Thank you. Alexandria. That's right. And all those things are significant. So we have over 100 years where things are going very well here in Palestine. But Antiochus, over here in Syria, defeated the Egyptian army near the head of the Jordan River in Panias, which forms some tributaries to the Jordan. And Palestine passed into Syrian control 198. Problems were in store for the better part, at least of 30 years, or more than 30 years, and then it was just power struggles for all of them. During this time, Rome defeated Antiochus at Thermopylae in 191, and then at Magnesia, and Antiochus III agreed to cede territories, surrender his war elephants, his navy, pay indemnity or military fines to Rome. All right, so during the meantime, way over here in Rome, we have they're encroaching on this area, and whereas Antiochus wants to go that way, he's being repelled. So to pay a huge debt, he attempted to raid a temple, and he's killed in 187. His son, Antiochus IV, also known as Epiphanes, or the Illustrious, followed him with this tremendous debt to Rome. Keep in mind the penalty, the fines that he was having to pay as Rome is beginning to come over, and Richard, at this time, they're a republic, right? And so they're coming over, and they're slowly encapsulating others. Well, he's got to pay that. So he's seeking then to unite this area. Remember, He's over here in Syria. He's seeking to unite the Jews under his control. And by doing that, he's seeking to unite them among the pro-Hellenistic followers among the Jews. And by eradicating their religion and bringing them all on board to the Greek way of life, he could help pay down his debt. The Waldrons point that out in pages 142 and 43. He forced the offering of incense to Zeus. He suspended temple rituals. He burned the scriptures. He made the Sabbath observance as well as circumcision forbidden. And he dies in 167. Well, that leads to what's known as the Maccabean Revolt or the Hasmonean Age. And there were some Jews, you just think, there are two parties. You've got the parties who think this is okay, we're kind of getting rid of our folksy ways and we're taking on Greek culture. And then these others are saying, no way, that we need to maintain our zeal for the Lord. And so there was a fellow by the name of Mattathias, Maccabees, or not Mattathias, Hasmoneus rather, and he leads this in 166. So we've got these time periods, 321 to about 198 under the Ptolemies, 198 to 166, where we have a whole lot of problems with the Syrians pushing down. The Waldrons make the point of putting a gymnasium there in Jerusalem, and where the young men would exercise nude. And to faithful Jews, this was just an anathema. And so what we have then, the Seleucids or the Antiochus and his followers are controlling this little area. Well, the revolt among the Maccabees started with this fellow by the name of Mattathias. And some Jews had come all the way down here to Modin. And this is where, I'm going to get some new batteries for this. This is where Mattathias comes on, and they were going to, they demanded that some of the Jews offer incense to Zeus. Well, he had one of the Jews who was going to do it killed, as well as the officer among the Syrians killed. And so, but he dies about 166, and then his son Judas ends up taking basically guerrilla warfare after these Syrians or Seleucids, and he's able to come back, and whereas they had put a statue of Zeus in the temple, he takes that out, he cleanses the temple, purges it from all that in 165, and hence we have the dedication of lights, or what is now known as what among the Jews? Hanukkah, around December 21, 22. He is followed by Jonathan, who is murdered in 142, and then Simon. And what is significant, these are all sons of Mattathias. Simon was made high priest, but he was not of the priestly lineage. And he was made ethnarch. And under him, they actually gained independence from the Seleucids. But what we have here, guys, is whereas the Syrians were coming, if you're thinking on a map, they're coming down and they're trying to control Palestine, and we have this guerrilla warfare fighting back, what happens is they're able to defeat the opposition. And so there's almost a political vacuum that is left in Palestine. Well, to fill that vacuum, what happens is these people who are leaders in the Hasmonean dynasty, they basically appoint themselves as high priest. And so the high priest position becomes a de facto political position during all this time. So with that, no political domination, the high priest became a political leader, de facto political leader among the Jews. Then Simon had a son by the name of John Hyrcanus, and he subdued the Idumeans, think Edomites to the south. He forced circumcision on them, the Edomites. He destroyed the temple in Samaria, you remember, that had been restocked after the Assyrians. He made both Samaritans and Edomites Jews in name only, and broke with the Pharisees and joined the Sadducees, who had Hellenistic or Greek leanings. He died in 104, and then he's followed by his son Aristobulus, who ruled only for 1 year. As he was dying, he wanted his widow, whose whose name was Salome to rule. She did for a while. And then Alexander Jannaeus is not his widow, but he ruled afterwards, and both ruler and high priest. Jews were in civil war. The Pharisees requested help, even from a Syrian ruler by the name of Demetrius III. So they're seeing, the Pharisees at this point are more loyal to the Lord, loyal to the law. But the Sadducees are what we would call the liberals. They're the pro-Hellenistic party. But Jannaeus was victorious against the Pharisees, after which he crucified 800 captives, whipped, and then slaughtered their wives and children. He's followed by his wife, Salome, who favored the Pharisees. In fact, as he was dying, he told her to be careful, be favorable toward them. But the civil war continued as the Pharisees sought vengeance on the Sadducees for what they had done under Jannaeus. He had given Hyrcanus the office, that is, she had the high office of high priest, because as a woman she could not function as a high priest. She died in 67 BC and was followed by her son Aristobulus. Well, Aristobulus was the brother to this fellow by the name of Hyrcanus II. So having residual authority as a political leader with the high priest, you can see what he did. He immediately deposed his brother from his high priesthood position, and then there were battles going back and forth. Yeah, I couldn't help but think as I was reviewing all this afternoon, they obviously didn't read Genesis 13, where you remember Abraham and Lot, the herdsmen, are arguing about the land, and Abraham says, "This ought not to be, for we are brethren." and here they're fighting to the death. So that's what we have. This brings us all the way down. In the Waldron material, as well as the material that I gave you from the Baker's Bible Atlas, it shows how the Hasmonean family comes down to Aristobulus, and then a little later the Antipater, and how there's the machinations going on with the son Herod, and how he becomes king over the Jews during the first century. So we'll maybe say more about that in later lessons, but right now I want us to let Richard have the rest of our time with Rome. Come on, Richard, if you would. And we've got a picture of the Roman Republic here, and I'll let Richard take us away from here. Put this in your pocket.
The story of Rome begins as a small village on the banks of the Tiber River in central Italy. Roman legend has it that the city or village was founded by two brothers, Romulus and Remus. From this humble beginning, Rome rose to control most of the Italian boot. And the instrument of war which Rome used was the Roman legion, or legio. The legio consisted of 10 cohorts of 1,000 heavy infantry, known as legionaries, and each cohort was subdivided into 10 centuries of 100 men each, which was controlled or led by centurion. It is from this humble beginning that the legions of Rome not only conquered Italy, but established an empire which at the zenith of its power commanded and guarded the frontiers of the empire from Hadrian's Wall in Scotland down through the Rhine River in Gaul, what is now France, and along the Danube down to Romania. And this empire, at this point in history, was the only major power in the Western Med. They conquered Carthage, and at the end of 3 wars, which the Romans called the First, Second, and Third Punic Wars, at the end of the Third War, Carthage was no more. The Romans destroyed the city and salted the land so it could not be built back. So Rome became the major power in the Western Med. The empires that they had, or the provinces that they had at that time, consisted of an area in southern France around what is now Marseille, all of Spain, North African coast from the Pillars of Hercules to the city of Carthage, which is now in Tunisia. And this republic consisted of a Senate and a Forum, and it was governed basically by the Senate. At the end of the Punic War, there was no more major powers that could oppose Roman conquest. And that didn't stop the Romans. They just fought among themselves in several civil wars. The first one being between Julius Caesar, who conquered Gaul, which is France, and Pompey, which worked in the east, conquering Egypt and subduing Judea. At the end of this civil war, Pompey was dead. The victorious Caesar went back to Rome, declared himself a permanent dictator, and that didn't go over too well with the Roman Senate. The senators conspired and assassinated Julius Caesar in the Forum on the Ides of March. If some of you know anything about the history or the legend, beware the Ides of March that was told to Julius, and that's when he died. At the end of this period, a civil war between the senators and Mark Antony, which was a lieutenant of Julius Caesar, and Julius Caesar's adopted son, Octavian, fought for control of the republic. At the end, the senators were defeated, and Mark Antony, Octavian, and another general divided up the republic. Mark Antony got the east, and he based himself in Egypt. Octavian had the rump of the empire in Italy, northern Italy, which is Cisalpina, and Gaul. And the other general, who didn't amount to anything, had Spain. But trouble was still on the horizon because they couldn't get along. Mark Antony teamed up with Cleopatra, the last Ptolemy who ruled in Egypt, and fought a civil war against Octavian. Octavian defeated the legions of Mark Antony at the Battle of Actium, and they committed suicide, Mark Antony and Cleopatra, in order to keep from being taken back to Rome as slaves. So that leaves Octavian. Octavian, after the war, went back to Rome, changed his name to Augustus, did away with the Republic, and made himself the first emperor of the Roman Empire. And this is the way it stood until we pick up the biblical thread with the birth of a male child in Bethlehem, which is a story we'll discover and read about and study at a later time.
You talked about it with Cleopatra and Mark Antony, that came into the placing Herod over the Jews. Can you talk about that some?
control of the area. They took taxes, they left them to themselves as long as they were law-abiding citizens, which the Jews proved not to be too good at. And it was at this point that when Herod came to power, Jesus was born in Bethlehem and went to Egypt to live with his parents, and they stayed there until the death of Herod the Great. Is that,
Yeah.
is that okay? You go ahead.
No, you want to say anything?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Richard.
It looks like Rome, all the Mediterranean Sea.
Yes.
It's like all the shoreline, they controlled all that.
It made it, and Brother Richard might want to say more about this. What it did is it made the Mediterranean Sea a Roman lake. In fact, people have used that phrase.
Mare Nostrum is what the Romans call it.
Yes,
Their sea.
their sea, yes. And so and it's interesting, guys, that with everything that has been done, that we've been studying about so far, with the pressing of the Greek culture and the Roman conquest, and then the Romans, as Brother Richard mentioned about the legions and the desire to be able to propel them quickly over various lands, road systems were increased. And so when you think about a common language, everyone could speak Greek. You had posts everywhere to guard the citizenry. You had road systems, and then what was called the Roman peace, protection. All of that goes in together to make the time when Jesus is born over here, and then roughly 33 years later, he dies and the gospel goes into effect, radiating, staying in Jerusalem for possibly 3 years, and then from Jerusalem to the region roundabout Judea, north to Samaria, and then as the Lord said in Acts 1 verse 8, to the uttermost parts of the earth. Then we have Paul's journeys in journey number 1 in southern Galatia, journey number 2 going over here into Greece to Corinth, journey number 3 primarily spending 3 years at Ephesus, and then after that he comes back to Caesarea, Jerusalem. They want to kill him. He appeals his case to whom? To Caesar, all the way to Rome, to the capital city of the world. And so you have really the peace of Rome, the roads of Rome, the Greek language, all going together to, and by the way, people who were all over, scattered, Jews who had been influenced by the Greek culture, were able to know their scripture because of what translation? The Septuagint, back in 285 BC. So all of this has come together to make the time that we're discussing when we come to the New Testament, the fullness of the times. And so I thought, I wanted Richard to be able to say what I knew he had in his mind about all that. Anything else, Richard?
Wherever the Roman legion marched, there established the road, but they also have cities that developed around their coast and major commercial centers.
Yeah, a Roman colony. Do you remember what city Paul went to in Acts 16? It was a special city. You remember? Philippi. In fact, Luke mentions specifically a Roman colony. And it was stocked with older soldiers who had been retired. They spoke the way, they dressed. It was like a little Rome there. That's anything else? Yes, sir.
Rome had the greatest navy that had ever existed.
Yes. Glad you mentioned that, because even Antiochus III, who had a navy, had to cede it to Rome as a part of his agreement back. So as we were talking a while ago, as the Syrians, just think Syria, in this Antioch of Syria, all this region over here was governed by Antiochus III, then the fourth, and then they came because of Rome and their expansion and the need to pay basically war debt to them. They encroached on God's people down in this area, down in Palestine. And with the push of the Greek culture, we have the separation. Some of the sects, sects, have become more divided among the Jews. Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Zealots. So all of that's going on to bring us to where we are in the New Testament. We have Sadducees and Pharisees, those groups. They have synagogue worship. The temple is still there, but you have a number of things that we'll see when we get to the life of Christ.
It's interesting that during the time that Rome is pushing, they're pushing to the east, Parthians.
Yeah.
They're pushing from the east to the west, and so that whole
Yes.
big area that Syria or the Seleucids had controlled is now just kind of all shrinking,
Yes.
shrinking away, and it's during some of this time that they're putting the worst pressure
On the Jews.
And, it's interesting to think about, here's a time, in my mind, I think, okay, here's a time that there's the famine of the word as far as God directly connected with the prophets and things like that. But, I think about those people. What about those people out in the countryside? What are they doing?
Mm-hmm.
Or how are they handling all this? Because even though God was not just constantly talking to them all, to somebody all the time, when you read, I almost get the feeling that there's a direct connection to somebody, and it's like there's no word from the Lord. You just wonder, how did they feel, and how did they maintain their faith? What did they do? How did they feel when they knew that as the priesthood was becoming corrupt and political and control the temple and all that? How did they handle it?
Yeah. Thanks for reminding me of that. We were talking about that very idea on the way over, that when you go back to where we were a while ago with I don't have to look at that. If you look at the page that we handed out on the Hellenistic age, if you look at what Pfeiffer wrote about let me see if I can find it. If you start on page 173, on this, really on the left column, Mattathias is mentioned, and I've got it highlighted. You can see there, and then Judas down in 165, and after Judas, Jonathan, then Simon rather, and then with John Hyrcanus down at the very bottom of the right-hand column on 173. The early years of Hyrcanus were difficult. Syria besieged Jerusalem, demanding heavy tribute and leveling of the city's fortifications. Hyrcanus refused to acknowledge defeat. He built up a personal army, began a program designed to make Judea a powerful state. Then when Syrian power declined, the Syrian armies were, next page, removed from Palestine. Hyrcanus determined to fill the vacuum. He conquered Samaria, destroyed the temple that the Samaritans had built on Mount Gerizim. Idumea, the portion of southern Palestine occupied by the descendants of the Edomites, was conquered and people forced to embrace Judaism. So you got all this political force. The policies could hardly be popular among the pious. Hyrcanus broke with the party of the Pharisees, the spiritual descendants of the pious who had stood out against Syrian tyranny in the days of Antiochus Epiphanes. He joined the Sadducees, the party with Hellenistic leanings. Now, how I'm tying all that into what Lee was mentioning, we were talking about that with Hyrcanus and following, you have the basically self-appointed high priest, what should have been a hereditary position, by righteous people who were, intermediaries between man and God. These were just people who were politically hungry. And we were talking about that. How would the common people out in the country feel when they knew how decrepit and corrupt these Jewish leaders in religious positions were? How would you feel? We know that there were a lot of people who were still righteous. We have in Luke 2, Anna, Simeon, they're looking for the redemption of Israel, the consolation of Jerusalem. We find bits and pieces scattered in the New Testament of people who were, in their simple righteousness, were trying to please the Lord. And yet, in the leadership, it was no different than it is in the United States politics today. Power hungry, willing to kill your own family in order to attain to power. And so what you had to do, like Lee was saying, these people, we don't know exactly how they felt, but we know that there were some righteous ones, and what they would have to do is just divorce themselves that, those are our leaders, but I want to serve the Lord. And the other thing that it would do is it would really, to people who were thinking, it would make them really want to desire whom? The Messiah. The Messiah. We were studying out at Donaldson today, and we mentioned Melchizedek. We were in Hebrews, the 5th chapter, and also in the 6th chapter. And Melchizedek's name means king of righteousness. His name means righteousness, king of righteousness, and he was king over Jerusalem, which is the city of peace. So you've got the king of righteousness over the city of peace, and he is our great high priest. And so it's so fascinating to see that when all of this corruption was going on in the leadership of the Jews, that the common people could have still desired a holy and a righteous priesthood, high priest, a judge among them. And so Jesus fits the bill completely in all that. Yes, sir.
The leadership was always informed by God of their misgivings.
Yes.
In Malachi,
Right.
wipe them out.
Right.
You lead these people, and
Yeah.
of course in Jeremiah where it says the kings were ungodly and the priests prophesied falsely.
And the people love it so.
Loved it so. The people of Israel had no leadership, no direct input from God.
Yeah.
From, what was it,
Amos 8. Mm-hmm.
Where it says, there'll be a dearth of the word of God.
Right.
They had no input outside the written scriptures.
Yeah.
They had no Levitical leadership, and everybody else was fighting for their own spot.
Yes.
And so we may one of these days, when the government decides we can't come to church,
Yeah.
and we can't do this, we can't have a Bible, we may know how they felt.
Yes. Yes.
So they were severely punished by Epiphanes. You can't keep circumcision.
Yeah.
The
The
tenets of Judaism,
Sabbath.
all
Mm-hmm.
knew and
Yes.
were ingrained in it. You're not going to do this.
Yeah.
You're going to be a brick.
Yeah.
And so when the government gets their foot on us, as they well may,
Yeah.
then we'll know how they felt. But they had no leadership, and what men are when they're left to themselves, you see what it was.
You see exactly what. Yeah.
Herod was apparently a man of some abilities, and he befriended himself to the Romans and got himself appointed. And the way the Romans ruled is they had people that were loyal to them, and they allowed them to collect the taxes as long as the taxes went to Rome. They didn't care what
Didn't care how it came, and then you had the publicans.
If the tax
Yeah.
comes home to Rome, then you're good, but
Yeah, that's right, the publicans are tax collectors
they were smart enough to upgrade the temple to win over the loyalty
of the Jews.
of the Jews.
Exactly. Yeah, the Herods were of Idumea or Edom, and they're again going back to Octavian or Augustus. Well, Octavian during those days, and then Antipater, and then Herod the Great. I'm reminded in James 4, whence come wars and whence come fightings among you? Come they not hence even of your pleasures that war in your members? That's really an answer to why there's so much problem. It's just, I want what I want, and if somebody gets in the way, we'll just get rid of him. And when God and His Word are not, they're not restraining people, they're not putting the reins on people's wills, then it's like Brother Gene said, it's every man for himself. And the people who are wanting to do right will find, we'll find pockets of the same, pockets of people who want to do right and seek that. But I was telling Lee on the way over that, even in the New Testament, when we come to where we are now, and you look around you at leadership, even in various congregations, and you think, this is what God intended? Well, not necessarily. But there's that difference between local churches and the universal church, the kingdom. And that the kingdom is made up of individuals, not churches, but of individual Christians. And the relationship is primarily between me and the Lord. And I think when we get that, then when people disappoint us in churches, local churches, our faith is not shattered because our relation is primarily with God. And while we're trying to do what we need to do, what God wants us to do, to encourage people around us to do right, to admonish them when they're not right, and be admonished ourselves when we're not right, still our spirituality is not totally dependent on somebody else. It's on me and my relation to God. And hence, when all of those passages in the prophets that we've studied talk about when the Messiah comes, He will reign in righteousness and justice and honor and all those adjectives, He does. And it's between me and Him. He will deal with me in the way that is right for me now and in the hereafter. You look like you want to say something.
I was thinking about the amount of time that had passed between the time that they all had signed the documents back then.
Yeah, Nehemiah.
They were recommitting themselves, rededicating themselves.
Yeah.
It's been, about 300 years?
Yes.
Since the time of the Revolution, we look at the amount of time.
About 240 years, 250. Yeah.
And where we are today.
Yes.
And where those Jews were at that point committed.
And then where they became, with corruption all around. Yeah.
It doesn't take very long.
No. It took the Jews under the judges how many generations to apostatize? One generation. There arose, and after those who were contemporary with Joshua, there arose a generation that knew not God. All right. Thank you, Brother Richard. Thank you. Any other, David, you looked like you wanted to say something. Brother Farron?
I think we have a little bit of a taste of how they felt the way our leaders, our political leaders are leading us down the path now to where you can't even find what a woman is. And they're trying to teach our kids that they can pick whether they want to be a boy or girl no matter how they were born. And I think our leaders today are leading us down that path. And the further we go that way, the worse off it's going to be.
Yeah. We were talking with the guys out at Donaldson. God did deal with the Jews as a nation, a nationalistic The Mosaic Law dealt with national laws, civil laws, moral laws, and religious laws. All four of those combined in the Mosaic Law. In the New Testament, and it was limited nationally. In the New Testament, go into all the world, preach the gospel to every. It's international in scope, and God does not tell us what to do as a nation, because the nation of the Israel of God today is not just the Pleasant Grove local church. It is, again, it's the universal church. That's me and God, you and God, everybody, God. And it's undiscernible. It's not something you can see in one location. It consists of people who are already dead as well as alive. The spirits of just ones made perfect, Hebrews 12 language describes it. And so all of that, we're not a physical nation of people like they were, but it's a spiritual thing, and it's really my relation with God. But we can't. How we have to deal with everything is on a local level, local congregational level. Yes, sir.
Can you go back to how important it was Septuagint was translated?
Yes.
Because they went from having to have a priest to read the law to them.
Yeah.
And then they had kids that couldn't even speak the language.
Yeah.
At least now they can read the word themselves.
Yes.
They've got that to go on.
The Waldrons make the point that Jesus and the apostles quoted from the Septuagint, and they make the point that obviously the Septuagint it met with God's approval. God wanted people to know His word, and so a reliable translation of God's word is certainly right. But yeah, you're exactly right. It was tremendously responsible for people knowing something about. And you think about the Gentiles who, I think about the centurion in Capernaum in Luke the 7th chapter. The Jews came to Jesus and they said, do something for him. He's a good man. He's built our synagogue. You wonder, how much did he know about the Jewish religion? How much did he know about Jehovah God? I would suppose quite a bit, though he was a Gentile, a Roman. How much did Cornelius know? He was a fearer of God, a God-fearer. So obviously he knew something about Jehovah, knew something about the law. And then when we come to the various cities, Antioch of Pisidia, Acts the 13th chapter, Paul addresses himself to men of Israel and all those that fear God. And they were there in the synagogue. So you have exactly what you're saying, the influence of the Septuagint and those Greek-speaking Jews all around the then known world. You had something else, Brother Gene?
Well, it gives us a full understanding and expression in the fullness of
Yes.
God
Yes.
knew the right time.
Yes.
He planned it before the foundation of the world.
Yes.
He knew what the situation was best for
Yes.
God to come in, and that's when he came.
And that's when he came. That's exactly right.
So it brings light to Acts 8, the Ethiopian Greek, the word there.
I'm sorry, David. It brings light to.
It brings the light of Acts 8 for Philip and the Ethiopian.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was reading.
Yeah.
So, like Charlie said, the Septuagint being translated, giving that opportunity.
Exactly. Okay, we better stop. It's about time, and we want to start in the life of Christ. I told Lee that I did not write this out, but I think I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to have some questions that I pass out to you, and you can be thinking about it. But, if you could just put in a couple of sentences, why was the Greek language the language of the New Testament? How did the Pharisees and the Sadducees, how did they originate? And just have it in the back of your mind, go back and look at those ideas. Where did synagogue worship first begin? Think about those ideas, and we may come back to it, but we'll try to get on into the life of Christ. Okay.